Friends, something very unexpected is happening right now between Russia and Ukraine, and the whole world is watching closely. After years of relentless war, rising civilian casualties, destroyed cities, sanctions, propaganda, and mounting international pressure, delegations from Russia and Ukraine are sitting down once again. This time, in Istanbul, Turkey. The goal? A possible ceasefire. But here's the twist. This isn't just another diplomatic formality. These talks are happening just one day after Ukraine launched a massive and unprecedented drone attack deep inside Russian territory. So now the big question is, why is Russia suddenly agreeing to talk peace? Let's break down what's really going on behind the scenes. The timing, the strategy, the real geopolitical calculations, and most importantly, what this means for the future of this brutal war. Let's start with the shocking event that triggered all of this. On Sunday, Ukraine carried out one of its largest drone offensives since the beginning of the war. Over 100 drones were launched at multiple regions inside Russia, not just near the front lines but deep into major Russian cities, including Moscow and oil facilities in Tatarstan. Several key targets were hit. A major oil refinery in the Krasnodar region caught fire. Fuel depots in Yaroslavl were damaged. Explosions were reported near Moscow's financial center. Russian defense systems did intercept many of the drones, but not all of them. That's important. It shows that Ukraine now has the capacity to strike anywhere in Russia, not just the occupied territories or border zones. And this is a strategic nightmare for the Kremlin. Because despite the propaganda, the reality is this: Russia's interior is no longer safe. Its infrastructure is now vulnerable. Public fear is rising, and for Putin, that's political risk, especially ahead of domestic elections and rising discontent over a war that many Russians never signed up for. Now you might be wondering, why Turkey? Why are peace talks being held in Istanbul? It's not random. Turkey, led by President Erdogan, has carefully maintained relations with both Russia and Ukraine throughout the war. It has supplied drones to Ukraine while also refusing to join Western sanctions against Moscow. Basically, it's one of the few countries still trusted by both sides. But even more importantly, these talks are not being held from a place of mutual agreement. They're happening because both sides are under massive pressure. Let's look at the timing. Ukraine has been facing a shortage of Western weapons in recent months. Aid packages from the United States were delayed due to domestic politics. Russia, on the other hand, is stretched militarily, economically isolated, and now, for the first time, dealing with frequent attacks on its own soil. So even though neither side is publicly admitting it, both are exhausted. Not just militarily, but financially, diplomatically, and politically. And that's where Turkey steps in, offering a neutral ground where both parties can save face while exploring a way out. Let's talk demands. So far, both Russia and Ukraine have radically different goals. Ukraine wants complete territorial restoration, including Crimea. Russia wants international recognition of the territories it has annexed, including parts of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. These are not small demands, they are completely opposite visions. But here's where it gets interesting. Multiple reports suggest that backdoor diplomacy has already been happening for months, quietly with intermediaries, and now the public ceasefire talks in Istanbul might be the first step in testing each other's red lines. For example, could Ukraine agree to temporary demilitarized zones? Could Russia agree to a freeze in territorial claims for now? Is there a possibility of neutral observers or UN peacekeeping forces in disputed areas? Right now it's all speculation, but the fact that both parties are sitting down, even after major escalations, shows there is some level of desperation and possibly a hidden willingness to compromise. Let's zoom out for a second. This war is not just about Russia and Ukraine, it's about global power dynamics. The US, EU, China, and even countries like India are closely watching this new round of talks. The US wants a stable Europe, especially ahead of the 2024 US elections. Europe wants energy security and to avoid a full-scale regional conflict. China wants to maintain its trade with Russia without being seen as complicit in war. India has managed a neutral stance so far, benefiting from discounted Russian oil, but even it wants long-term regional stability. In other words, global players are subtly pushing for some form of resolution, or at least de-escalation. This is not about peace for peace's sake, it's about strategic interest. Let's be real. A ceasefire is not the same as peace. Even if a temporary ceasefire is agreed upon, it doesn't mean the war is over. It just means a pause in fighting. Think of it like this. A ceasefire is like hitting the pause button, not the stop button. The real challenge will be turning that pause into a political solution. But history tells us, wars usually don't end on the battlefield. They end on the negotiating table. And right now, with both Russia and Ukraine bleeding resources, losing public support, and facing economic limits, this might be the closest we've come in years to an actual shift. So what comes next? Here's what to watch for in the next few weeks. 1. Outcome of the Istanbul talks. Will there be a joint statement, or will both sides walk away and blame each other? 2. Western reactions, especially from the US and NATO. If they support talks, it could add momentum. If they discourage compromise, it could stall progress. 3. On-ground military activity. If there's an actual ceasefire, we'll see troop movements halt, at least temporarily. 4. Media narratives. Both sides will try to spin the outcome as a win. Watch closely for language like victory, sovereignty, and security guarantees. In short, don't look at the headlines, look at the patterns. The real signals are always behind the scenes. Friends, this war has already cost over 500,000 lives and displaced millions. Cities like Mariupol, Bakhmut, and Kharkiv are almost unrecognizable. Economies are broken, families are shattered. If even a temporary ceasefire can stop more deaths, it's worth watching very closely. But remember, ceasefires can be fragile, and diplomacy, especially in war, is a game of chess, not checkers. So stay tuned, because the next few days could define the future of Europe.